dragons were real, what differences they would have compared to their popular depictions. They would probably fuck cars. Cars would probably fuck them. Check out the exhaust coming off that tailpipe. They'd probably need those hollow bird bones to be light enough to fly. So they probably wouldn't be all that hard to kill. Maybe bats, for example, don't have hollow bones. Assuming you won't get scorched. They're real. They're called bearded dragons and they're adorable. And Komodo dragons, and they're kinda close to real dragons, only missing fire and wings. Well, you know how birds shit on you when in cars when they fly over. Imagine that, but about 600x bigger. Death by dragon poo is now an official cause of death. Much larger wings. They'd be some heavy mofuckers if they were as big as depicted, and the heavier the animal, the bigger the wings. Their wingspan for one would be massive, far larger than anything depicted in popular media. I believe the depiction of Smaug's wings are a realistic expectation for a dragon that size. Their fire breath would most likely be a chemical spray like bombardier beetles. Their diets would likely consist of buffalo, elephants for inland dragons, or large schools of fish. For coastal dragons, they would likely have extremely soft underbellies, but would fly with their limbs tucked in with the tougher scales pointing out. Their heads would probably be more streamlined and would have two sets of teeth that are constantly popping out and growing back in like sharks. Also, since they have wings, it's not too unreasonable to assume their lungs would be quite similar to birds for obvious reasons. Fire breathing would be a rare occurrence, and not nearly as massive or hot as it's depicted. It's a massive energy expenditure, as they'd need to consume more calories than they'd expend with each fire breath. Factor in conversion losses as they metabolize meat and fat into a flammable state like methane. It would likely be used as more of a display, either to attract a mate, or challenge a rival male. Or maybe they don't actually breathe fire at all. Maybe they're barfing up acid or spitting venom instead. They'd have the intelligence not to burn entire cities full of innocent people down just because their mother told them to. That really depends on what counts as a dragon. In general, if by dragon you mean mythical reptile, they would almost all be stronger than the dragons from God. The exception to this would be the dragon slain by Beowulf before he died to the poison. They scale from that to primordial gods, so the world wouldn't exist anymore. They'd have large penises rather than just being Ken-dolled. Probably cloacas. They would probably have feathers, really big feathers. Many dinosaurs. They'd be herbivores. They'd be dumb as shit like other reptiles. Wings would need to be way bigger. They're not stuck in the Middle Ages. You know, they don't hoard stockpiles of gold when it's much more sensible to store their wealth in the form of a mix of stocks, bonds, and real estate. Or colossal geeks. They'd have feathers, apparently, and would most likely just look like giant, fire-spewing birds with tails. It would probably be a lot closer to Reign of Fire than Pete's dragon. Humans would hunt them to extinction if we weren't killed off first. We would debate if dragons that only eat certain races of people are racist or are entitled to having their own preferences. They'd either be much larger or much smaller. If they were smaller, they could be about the size of a house cat. If they adapted to life in the city, you might find them rummaging through your bins instead of foxes. Maybe they would eat wood and be magnetic. Instead of hoarding gold, they would hoard Reddit karma and Instagram likes. Dragons were real. We humans just killed all of them in epic battles of heroism this year. They would not have 6 appendages, 4 legs and 2 wings, like the common European depiction. They would likely have thin bones and generally be less beefy than is typically portrayed, except for massive chest muscles used in flight. They would also have much larger wings in proportion to their bodies. Otherwise they would not be able to fly. Most likely they wouldn't have scales either. They'd likely either have thin fur like a bat, just skin like the flying prehistoric reptiles, or feathers. In order to breathe fire, they'd have to have organs that generate chemicals which, when mixed in the air, would ignite. Possibly potassium permanganate, sulfuric acid, and acetone. No wings. Aside from being much larger, I have a feeling that the wings wouldn't attach to the body where we'd expect them to. If they were to glide and dive, I'd think the wings would have to be attached much closer to their center of gravity. So somewhere mid to low back rather than high on their shoulders. On a similar note, if humans could fly, I'd expect the wings to attach closer to our love handles than our shoulders. Just imagine what angel depictions would look like if they had their wings jutting out of their lumbar region. Cars would probably fuck them. Check out the exhaust coming off that tailpipe. Maybe bats, for example, don't have hollow bones, assuming you won't get scorched. And Komodo dragons, and they're kinda close to real dragons, only missing fire and wings. Death by dragon poo is now an official cause of death. Also, since they have wings, it's not too unreasonable to assume their lungs would be quite similar to birds for obvious reasons. Or maybe they don't actually breathe fire at all. Maybe they're barfing up acid or spitting venom instead. Probably cloacas. Many dinosaurs.